our next speaker, we have the beautiful Elizabeth Hunter Diamond. Let's give her a big round of applause.
I'm here to tell a story. It's a love story. Yeah, right? But this love story begins in a very unlikely place. It begins on a cold, gray, wet February morning in San Francisco. And I'm standing in the front room of the apartment I've been sharing with my boyfriend David for several years. And I've been feeling this moment come for some time. My heart is pounding. I can barely breathe. And he's sitting over there in the corner, backed up in the corner of that cold brown leather couch, and he's staring at the floor. He cannot look at me. So I'm watching him, and he's staring at the floor. And finally he says it. I love you, but I want to move on. And I look at him and I'm like, well, what about couples therapy? He keeps looking at the floor, shaking his head no. What about just some time apart? Keeps looking at the floor. I just want to move on. And I stand there, I'm staring at him, my heart is pounding, and silently begging if he could just look at me. If he could just see me. But he can't. So I pull myself together. I know what I have to do. I pack up all my belongings. I move them into storage. And I find this tiny room to rent out on the edge of a eucalyptus grove. I'm in the tiny room in a cabin. All I have with me are my dog, my laptop, a few bags of clothes. And I spend my very first night in that room. And I'm there, I'm alone. I'm angry, I'm heartbroken, and I'm disillusioned. I'm asking myself, how is it possible? How could it be that here I am again in the very same place I've been so many times before? How is it possible after everything that I have done to avoid this very thing from happening? You see, let me tell you a little bit about everything that I've done. From my earliest memories, my deepest longing, the greatest desire of my life has been a healthy, thriving, vital, fulfilling relationship, right? It's been my deepest longing, and I knew from my early experiences, I had a whole lot to learn. And so I launched myself into my learning with gusto. There was therapy. There was counseling. There was self-help. I devoured all of the books. Venus and Mars, attachment theory, love languages. I learned I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, and what does that mean about relationship? I'm a Libra sun and Aries moon, and what does that mean about relationship? I workshopped my way through my 30s and 40s, all to get relationship and to get it right. I even did graduate coursework for a master's in marriage and family therapy. So you see, I was not kidding around. So there I am, that first night in that cabin, and I'm alone and I'm angry. I can't, it's just, right? Yeah. Have you ever had a moment like this when the bottom falls out? You're forced to face your life. There's a real reckoning that happens. And if you're lucky, you have had a moment like this, and you know what I mean. Because it's moments like this is where there's a tiny crack that can form in a very carefully constructed way of being. And it's in that crack, through that crack, that's where the light gets in. So there I am lying in bed saying, how is this possible? And that's when a crack happened for me. I just decided I'm done. I'm done with the chase. I was thinking about seriously, the tens of thousands of dollars I had spent over the course of 2 decades trying to get relationship and get it right, the thousands of hours in training and all the tools and the tactics and the strategies, and seriously, all of these things that I had accumulated landed me in the very same spot that I'd done over and over and over again. So I had to face the fact that fundamentally nothing had changed after all of that. And in facing that fact, that's where the crack happened for me, and I let it all go. I was done with the chase. No more. No more chasing. And then something else happened in that moment. In the absence of everything that I just let go, without any forethought, my right hand goes to my heart, my left hand went to my belly, and these words emerged from the core of my being. I will never abandon you again. And I listened to that. I'd never heard that before. Seriously. I will never abandon you again. The more I listened to that voice, the more my body relaxed, my breathing slowed down, and this warmth began to fill my body. And I knew in that moment that absent of everything that I just let go of, everything that I thought I knew about relationship, everything that I accumulated about it, I let it go, and there was this beautiful void. And in that void, there was the one knowing: I would never abandon myself again. Now, the surprising part about this whole story is that I ended up marrying David. And I'll get to that part in a minute. Got to hang in with me here. I want to share with you what I learned living in that cabin, because I ended up living there for over a year. And in the days and weeks and months that followed that very first sleepless night in the cabin, I realized that I had been doing all of my relationship and all of my seeking and workshopping and all of that. I was doing it from a perspective of trying to get something from relationship that I could not locate here, right? And there were many things, but there were 2 main things that I realized I was looking for. I was looking for commitment. I really wanted that experience of someone to choose me. Someone to say, Elizabeth, I have your back. I'm taking a stand for you. I'm in this with you, 2,000%. You are my person. And I also wanted validation. I wanted to be seen, heard, and valued for the truth of my being, not for how pretty I was or how smart I was or what I did. No, for the truth of my being. I had never had these experiences before, and I thought, surely that's what relationship is about, right? I should be able to expect these from my partner in relationship. That's why we get into relationship. That's what I thought. But what I came to realize is that this way of thinking about relationship, it is based in a fundamental lie. A lie that says, I'm not whole, I'm not connected to source, I'm a limited being who needs someone or something outside of me for me to be at home in the world. And I realized that this way of thinking about relationship as a means to an end, as a way to get needs met, that way of thinking denies access to my infinite nature. It cuts me off. And every single time I believed that lie, every single time I tried to get a man to give me some kind of commitment or to validate me, I was essentially abandoning myself. It's a form of self-betrayal. Now, I know what you might be thinking. I want to be very clear. I'm not leading you down a path that says we're meant to be islands. Not at all. And I'm not talking either about having a knee-jerk reaction to a failed relationship that says, you see, I can't count on a man. I'll just have to take care of myself. I've done that. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something so much greater, talking about something that touches on the vastness of who you are as a soul. Because the truth is that these things that we crave for in relationship, these deep longings that we have, whether it's commitment and validation like it was for me, or maybe for you it's something else, maybe it's safety, or maybe it's passion, or adventure, or creativity. These are in fact the frontiers of our own wholeness that we're being called to discover, to explore, to claim them for ourselves, within ourselves. Yeah. Right? And here's the thing is when we do that, when we say yes to our own wholeness, oh my gosh, relationship is an entirely different ballgame. It's no longer about trying to get our needs met, and instead it's about filling ourselves up from within and then sharing the overflow with someone else who has overflow to share. So that may sound all well and good, but how do we do that? How do we fill ourselves up from within and share in the overflow? How did I become my own source of commitment and validation? Well, remember, I was in that cabin for a whole year, so it was a process. For sure, there were many things that I did, many steps that I took to support myself in becoming my own source. And there are 3 I'd love to share with you right now. The first thing that I did is I put everything under the microscope. Absolutely everything. I understood that almost everything, if not everything, in my life, I had chosen from a context of seeking commitment and validation from outside of me. So I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how it showed up. I wanted to see where all of the disappointments and the expectations and the blame and the criticism, how all of that was rooted in this whole notion that I wasn't whole. So I looked at the food I ate, the clothes I wore, my daily routine, my friendships, the communities I was engaged with, and most of all, my self-talk. Right? And then once I really looked at everything, this was an important step. I owned it. I owned it. It was all my creation. I owned all of it. I recognized that there was nobody doing anything to me. It was simply a creation out of the foundation of a lie. And once I owned it, I cleared house. Now, I was in a tiny cabin, so it wasn't that hard to clear house, but I really did. I cleared house. I emptied my life of everything, and I literally started with a blank piece of paper on the wall of that room. And I would only bring things back in if they aligned with an inner yes, with my own inner yes to me. So day by day, week by week, I recreated my life. I actually created my life. Not talking recreate, I created my life based on my own inner yes to me, on the foundation of my own wholeness. So then one day, it's December now, so I've been there from February into December. It's a beautiful day in Northern California, 70 degrees and sunny. I decided to take my dog to the beach. So we drive over the mountain, park the car, and we walk down the narrow sandy path between the beach houses. And we climb the sand dune that gives way to the beach. And as we get to the top of the sand dune, out in the water beyond the breakers are 2 whales. And they're breaching the surface and they're rolling and playing. So I kick my shoes off and I run down to the edge of the water. I'm there with my dog and we just watch these whales play. The sun is shining and the sun is glistening on the surface of the water. And I take a deep breath. I can feel that fresh, salty air fill my lungs. And I dig my toes into the cold, wet sand. And I am filled with an immense joy of being me. And I realize that nothing is missing. No one is missing. I am full and overflowing. And so, guess what happens next? Just a few short weeks later, David shows back up on the scene. We haven't spoken in almost a year. But he's not that same guy from that cold brown leather couch. And he's not the same guy who could only see me through the filter of his past relationships. Here he was, too, completely transformed, connected to his own wholeness in his own way. And he could see me, and he was ready. And so we began to rebuild. Actually, no, not rebuild. We began to build a new relationship, an entirely different relationship. Based on our own wholeness, where we're filling ourselves up from within and sharing in the overflow with each other. We've been married now for several years. And yes, it's real. We have our stuff for sure. But it's all on a foundation of our wholeness. And what that does is it creates this space of mutual understanding and mutual seeing and shared celebration, and always in the context of growth. What are we learning today? And now before I go, I just want to share one last thing with you. You see, the point of this story isn't that I got the guy. The point of the story is I got the girl.